kid. Talk about just getting the opportunity to now put the Kentucky jersey on.
It's been a blast. I mean, it's like everything you dream of as a kid. Like all the stories I've been hearing from past players that I've met and known, and that it's unreal experience. And like every day, Trent Noah said it best. Like every time I put the jersey on, it feels special every time. So it never gets old. And I'm looking forward to put on the game jersey. Get inside a rough arena. So that's going to be even more fun.
Now that most of the team's actually on campus, has there been anything that's been surprising about just like the summer training sessions and what this team has kind of looked like gelling together this early?
This team has gelled very well together. Like I feel like we've known each other for a couple of years now. I feel like we got a lot of newer guys, and then everybody's like kind of came along a lot together. We've all been supporting each other. Hanging out in each other's rooms, doing different activities. So to grow closer and closer, because that's what it's going to take to win a national champion. You got to do more than just like the on-court stuff. I mean, obviously you see the on-court stuff. Like we got dudes that can go. So it's the stuff off the court. I think that's going to make us special and better than everybody else.
How did that process start when Coach Pope contacted you, or vice versa?
It was kind of wild. So, Coach Feger messaged me, and when he reached out, I didn't believe Kentucky reached out to me. I was like, I showed my dad. I was actually in Lexington, and I was like, Dad, I think Kentucky just reached out to me, and he was like, Nah, you're lying. Because you have all the coaches that reach out to you once you hit the portal, and then I told him I was interested, and Coach Pope actually FaceTimed me, and I was like, oh my, Coach Pope is FaceTiming me, so it was surreal, but it was very blessed to have that.
When you went into the portal initially, what were you looking for, I guess? Obviously, you were surprised when Kentucky called, so what kind of was your thought process going into the portal and maybe your role you were looking for initially before Kentucky?
For sure. So going into the portal, actually, I had, a lot of talks with my former coaches, we just kept it real with each other. We were saying, I always wanted to play at the highest level. That's always been the goal. So, last couple of years, we've been trying to compete for a MAC championship and compete for upsets and stuff like that, and that's always not kind of been my mindset going into it. I came from a top high school in this state, and so the goal is to get out of the region. The goal is you're winning state and you're the number one team in the state. So it's always been my mindset. That's always how I like to play basketball. I want to compete against the best people. So going against some of the teams we were able to go against last year. I played Indiana last year at Indiana, and that was the most fun I ever had. Playing in a packed house. That everybody hated us, and it was the most fun I ever had. So I was like, I'm just going for that every time. So there's no better place to do it than the best university in the country.
What advice or what would you tell your senior year version of yourself over at Lexington Catholic?
What I tell myself, you don't know much. I'd probably say, coming out of high school, I thought I knew a lot. Coach Salzman did a great job teaching me, but just every night I was doing whatever I wanted. To be honest with you, nobody was getting in my way. Until I got to go against Malachi and them. Some great players like that. So that's kind of the first time I've been a college guy. So just put your head down. Keep your ears open, and just these coaches are here for a reason. They get paid a lot of money. They're here for Kentucky for a good reason. So just listen to what they got to say, pretty much.
Obviously, you do a lot of work with the rest of the bigs on the team. What can we expect from guys like BG, Malachi, or maybe even Jaden, even though he's injured right now?
You should expect a lot, and you're going to get a lot, to be honest with you. We work hard every day. We got a lot of bigs that can go. And so every night, I feel bad for the other bigs because they're going to have to see a bunch of dudes every single night. BG, all of them through the line. We got a bunch of big dudes that can, grab boards, shoot threes. I feel like that's the greatness of this this big group. We can do a little bit of everything. We can all shoot, we can all pass, we can all be physical. So I feel bad for the other team because they're gonna have to see it for 40 minutes every night.
Obviously, you started summer workouts. What's been kind of the biggest adjustment so far?
I don't know if I would say it was a big adjustment. So I've been in college for a couple of years now, so I kind of knew what to expect and stuff like that. So just put your head down, work every day. You're not gonna feel great every single day, so just putting your head down, working, and just give it your all every single day to try to get better, because there's always room to grow.
You've kind of shown what you've been able to do in college thus far at Miami. But what's the next evolution of your game that you're trying to develop now?
No, the biggest thing is honestly, everybody says is just getting bigger and stronger. Trying to put on some more weight. Getting bigger. So I've already put on some weight. Thanks to Randy and B-Wells, they do a great job. We got the best strength coach and trainers in the country, so they've been able to do a great job with that aspect. So I just the rest of the year just trying to get bigger and stronger and keep growing my game.
Coach,
on that note, we've heard about some of these film sessions that Pope will do, especially when kids are in the transfer portal.
Sure.
when he was talking with you when you were going over the film, what were some of the things that he liked that he thought you could bring to Kentucky, and maybe some of the things that he wanted you to improve on coming to Kentucky?
So, there's like obvious, I feel like I shoot the ball at a very high level and I'm able to pass. And those are the things, he really liked. He was able to use Mari Williams and BG last year in like a more of a point center type of way. And so, he kind of fall in love with that. He was able to have some guys like that at BYU, and that's kind of how the game's evolved. The Nikola Jokic is in the passing like that. So he really liked that, and just some other stuff that I got to work on and grow that every day, we're working on. He does a great job. He's very intellectual, knows what he wants, and, he sees what he sees in his players, and he doesn't recruit you for a reason. So, just working every day to try to, grow the rest of my game.
So does he see you kind of being a high post type guy who could maybe facilitate a little bit more as well, or is that something you had in your game at Miami?
For sure, that's definitely something I did at Miami, and I want to continue to grow. I got some great players in front of me that do a great job of it, so I'm able to learn from them and keep growing my game and practice every single day.
Coach likes to downplay his career, but he did play quite a bit of time in the NBA. How cool is it to literally get one-on-one teaching from a big man who played in the NBA?
Oh, I love it. He was able to do it at the highest level, so it's easy to follow a guy that's done it at that level. So you have coaches that tell you what to do, but you can't really grasp it at first. So we've been able to grow a quick relationship because he did it at the NBA, did it in college. He did it at the highest level, and that's the type of level I feel like all the bigs want to go to. So obviously, because we're here for a reason. So all of us trust in him, and so it's easy to listen to what he's got to say.
From here, been around Kentucky basketball most of your life. Is there anything that's been surprising to you since you're now actually on the inside?
Yeah, I don't know how much surprising it would be. I feel like now that I'm more in the moment, it's kind of wild versus looking from the outside. We go to these camps and stuff like that, and these people just how much they love Kentucky basketball. It's not just the fan base is wild. I don't feel like it's just a basketball team. It's more of a culture surrounding Kentucky basketball. We were able to go to London, Kentucky, and some different places, and really learn what it meant to be a Kentucky basketball player. I felt like I knew from being a Lexington kid, but I feel like everybody's kind of bought in what it means to be a Kentucky basketball player now. Just hearing from different people's stories that just how much they've loved Kentucky basketball for how long. Their parents loved it. Their parents loved it. So it's been kind of wild to hear from all those people.
Do you have a favorite UK player all time?
I feel like I have to say Daniel Orton because he trained me for so long. But he can. I'd probably say DeMarcus Cousins, to be honest with you. Just the way he was able to dominate at Kentucky and just how physical he was. And, that was kind of how I was trying to grow my game at first.
What is your relationship with Daniel Orton? How long have you known him, and kind of what roles he plays?
I've known him probably since my freshman year of high school. So he moved from Oklahoma here after his playing days. So me and him used to go at each other during practice. Every single morning we used to work out because he was still, that was still during his playing days. So I was able to, learn from him and grow from him. And we have a great relationship. I still talk. I talk to him every single day. So he always calls me just to, tell me to hop on the game or stuff like that. So it's been a great, grown into a great friendship for sure.
Is it different starting your career elsewhere and then coming here?
I don't know how. Honestly, I don't know. So I'd probably say no, to be honest with you. Starting from a different place. I feel like it kind of helped me, grow into the player I am, and I'm so thankful for my last school. So I feel like it helped me really mature versus, coming in as a freshman. I feel like, coming out of high school, I thought like he asked earlier, I thought I knew a lot, and then I was able to, Coach Steele and all of them were able to, teach me a lot. So, coming in as a junior now, I feel like I'm a lot more mature, a lot more open to everything, able to learn a lot more now.
You obviously grew up watching this team, but what do you like about what Mark Pope is trying to do here?
He kind of just says the assignment number 9. I mean, that's what he's trying to do. I don't know. He loves basketball, and that's what he's here to do. He wasn't brought in here to do anything else, and he's already done it before, so he knows what has to be done to do that. So that's kind of what he's brought in.
You mentioned the excitement of that Indiana game. Now you're in the SEC. Is there a way to simulate that within the practices, just the intensity of what the conference schedule will bring?
I'd say 100%. We always say it, we're the deepest team in the country. 1 through 15 guys, everybody can probably play anywhere in the country. So every single day it's a challenge. Every single day everybody's trying to bring it. Fighting for spots and stuff like that. Our whole team can go. So it's been fun practicing.
Kind of on that note, I'm sure you had conversations with Pope about having a deeper front court. Did you all talk about, maybe the role might be not what you're expecting first of all, or did you all talk about that?
No, we didn't really go into that, So it's pretty much what you produce. You play the best players on the court. It doesn't matter anything else. So just going on the court every single day and working hard. Whether my role is to just sit or play. I don't really care either way. It's my goal is here to win number 9 and just trying to grow every single day.
Have you played in Rupp Arena?
I have not played in Rupp Arena, which is honestly very sad. So I feel like some people that have watched me since high school, I feel like we were the best team in the state every single year. Yeah, embarrassing, but I haven't. So I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Are there any returning players or other newcomers that have surprised you so far?
I don't feel like anybody's really surprised me. I feel like you see the highlights of that's what you see on the court. So nobody's really surprised me, to be honest with you. Every single guy is just, I feel like the most thing that surprised me is just how great everybody is, how great of dudes are. People come from we get dudes from other single schools, and they're not they're that's in the past for them. They're so bought into the Kentucky basketball. So that's kind of. Coach Pope says it. He recruits culture. He can get anybody in the country. It's Kentucky, so he gets whoever he wants. So how much everybody's loved each other so fastly. That's probably been the most surprising because I feel like I said earlier, I feel like we've been together for 3 years now. We're all hanging out in the lodge, shooting, doing different stuff, working out each other at night. So that's probably been the most surprising how bought in we are so fast.
When you visualize that first run out at Rupp Arena, what do you think about in your mind what that's going to feel like, especially coming from someone who used to be one of those little kids just idolizing
for sure.
this team?
Yeah, so I used to go to games, and I was always trying to picture how I would be doing that. I wish I could have done that in high school, but I wasn't able to get that opportunity. So it's gonna be a surreal moment. I don't know. I feel like every single game, every time I come out, it's gonna be it's gonna feel like it's new every single time. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Reece, I watched you a lot in high school, but how much has your game matured and grown since going to Miami and coming back here? What have you worked on and what have you improved on?
Just trying to get bigger and stronger. In high school I was always tall, but I was a thinner guy. So just trying to get bigger and stronger every single day. Growing my game. Listening, learning from the best. They're college coaches for a reason. So just learning every single day what they got to learn. I've been able to just mature a lot. I feel like.
Can you talk a little bit about having Kentucky people from the state playing on this roster, and what people know about Kentucky basketball elsewhere?
To be honest, Kentucky basketball, everybody knows us. We're the top university in the country. So I feel like everybody's seen all these players. You've been able to see firsthand, the Malachi Morenos, the Jasper Johnsons, but you've been able to see the other guys through highlights and stuff like that, and that's what they're going to see. Every single day. Every guy, every single day during practice, you see something, you're like, wow, it's kind of wild. So.
Did you watch Jasper in Switzerland?
Yeah, we were able to we all sat around and watched them. So we were able to watch I forgot who they played the first game, but we were able to watch it, and we were able to see the step back, and we were all going nuts for him because that's what we see in practice every single day. We see that Jasper, so I'm really looking forward to watching his game grow. As he matures and gets older, and he's gonna be a first round pick in a couple, this year or next year. So none of that stuff surprises us, to be honest with you. None of that's surprised the fans, a little bit probably right now, that shot, but that's what we were expecting of him, and he's gonna have big things this year. So I'm really looking forward to it.
What's the level of talent in practice right now that you guys are competing against each day?
Oh, it's a ton. Like I said earlier, we're the deepest team in the country, so every single day, everybody brings it. So I feel like it is an SEC game every single day in practice. Every guy is, going as hard as possible, and our coaches push us every single day. And I feel like the biggest thing right now is we push each other. I feel like that's what, it's going to make us a national championship, how much we gel off the court and how much we push each other. We're in the gym every single night shooting with each other, working out, playing one-on-one and stuff like that. And so, different open gyms and stuff like that. So, really looking forward to, actually competing against other people. I've got, it's getting tiring going against each other. I'm looking forward to, versing other guys.
We talk a lot about, what the guys can do scoring wise, but what can you say about the defense that you've seen so far?
We're going to be the best defensive team in the country, I'd probably say. We got guys, I'm not even going to list people. We've got the whole team. But, we got all guys that, we got a lot of length and, shot blocking. And I feel like 1 through 5, we're going to have, it's going to be a battle who's going to be the defensive player of the year in the SEC because, it could probably be anybody. So I'm looking for, teams are going to have a tough time. We can score the ball and we can defend, so I feel like that's, recipe for success.
Reece, I understand you were super close to committing North Carolina and Kentucky call. Can you talk about the emotion when you got that call and maybe how easy that decision was, even though it's so deep into the transfer period?
Oh, it was fairly easy. So, when they called, my immediate reaction was, all right, let me just call Coach Pope right now back and say, let's be done with this. But, I wanted to take my time, coming, being a Lexington kid, I knew how much it mean, to put on the jersey. And so, in the back of my mind, I always knew this is the place I wanted to go to. But, I try to give the other schools a chance, but, I always knew I wanted to come here. And, it's been a blessing for sure.
When that was announced, how much did your phone or your social media blow up with people?
It was wild. So, it was actually the night before it started blowing up. So, I don't know how it got out. If anybody wants to let me know, I'd love to know. So I told one of the managers, who was one of my best friends, Miller Williams, and I was like, hey, I'm coming here. I told Malachi, Jasper, because I've had a great friendship with them for a couple years now. They're great dudes, and I told them I'm coming. They were like, finally, because they were, for like a week. Malachi and Jasper was like, if you don't commit right now, we're gonna come to your house. And I was like, all right, I'll just give me a minute. So I committed. So I called Coach. He was so excited, and I just loved hearing what he had to say, so I committed. And then that night, it blew up, and people were messaging me, everybody was like, "You didn't tell me Kentucky was talking to you. You didn't tell me Kentucky." I was like, I try to keep it low key. I try to keep it low key. That's kind of who I am. I don't want to, not a big social media out there. And so when that blew up, everybody was telling me that, and then the next day was wild. I had to shut my phone off because everybody. But it's all love. The amount of people contacting me, just supporting me. I really this fan base is unbelievable.
How cool is it to be coached through by Coach Pope, who obviously knows what it's like to be a big, not only college, but also the NBA? Is that helpful to you?
Yeah, it's very helpful. So I think all of our bigs, we're able to grow a very quick friendship with him, or been very open with him, because, he was able to do it at the highest level. So, it's very easy to listen to somebody who's done it at the highest. He's been where we want to go. So it's very easy to, just follow his lead.
Do you ever bring up those high school games against Great Crossing?
Oh, yeah. Me and him have a lot of arguments because, actually, yeah, because I feel like so we played him, I guess it would have been his sophomore year, and I'd been senior, so, I ended his sophomore year, shout out Malachi Moreno, love you gang, but had to pack you up. And then, so his senior year, he beat our team to go to state. And so I always like to say, you kind of got bailed. You're lucky I wasn't there, because they had a couple shots. And, then you got to see his greatness last year in the state tournament. I feel like he really started coming into himself in that state tournament. Once he got to state, you really saw, this kid's a lottery pick. He's great, and he's learning a lot. And, everybody's going to look forward to watching him play.
What kind of a point guard is Jalen?
He is a true point guard. People like to say people are point guards, but we got a lot of guys like him. He's just a born leader. I would like to say. He's just every single day. He's practically like a coach. So he's able to just he's able to help us a lot. He's only been here for a certain amount of time, but like I said earlier, it's like he's been here for a couple of years now, because he's able to direct traffic and tell everybody where to go, and it's going to be really helpful, and it's going to be really special this year.
Kind of a general question, just about you, for someone your size with your skill set, how do you balance wanting to step out and shoot more threes as opposed to maybe working more back to the basket type stuff?
Yeah, so a lot of it in high school was I just kind of worked on that stuff, the outside game, just during practice, and just we had a rule in practice. I wasn't able to post up because I was just so much bigger than everybody. So I feel like that really helped grow my game, to be honest with you, because I used to get frustrated. I'd be like, Coach Sauls, I just want to let me go shoot a hook shot right now. He's like, no, Reece, you don't have to do this in college. And I was like, you're right. So I feel like that helped grow my game a lot. And so once I got to college, that was a part of my game, and I was able to just do that right away versus having to learn it.
Is there a particular game on the schedule that you see wait a minute, I can't wait for that?
I'm looking forward to all of them. I feel like our matchups, we have probably one of the best schedules in the country. Every single night it's going to be a battle, and we're going to come out on top every single night. But I'm really looking forward to, I wouldn't say a game, I'm really looking forward to playing in Madison Square Garden. I feel like I've never done that before. I've never been to New York, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. It's a historic place, and it's going to be kind of wild stepping on that court. But probably that, and then stepping into Rupp Arena for the first time is going to be wild.
Some people have talked about Brandon Garrison making kind of a jump from year one to year two here. What have you seen from him, and how has he maybe helped you out even a little bit?
He's helped me out a ton. I love BG, so he's done this for a year. He's been here for a year, so he's able to he's been a really good leader for some of us newer guys this year, just helping us learn the offense quicker and the defense quicker. And the coaches really expected that out of him, and he's really stepped into it this year. I feel like he's doing a great job, and so he's able to, we're able to learn a lot faster right now because we only have a certain amount of coaches, so he's taking me, taking Malachi, taking guys off the court and saying, hey, this is, you got to do this, you got to do this, and he's done it for years, so we listen to him, and he's gonna be he's going to be in the NBA in a couple of years, whenever he wants to go. So, it's easy to, like Coach Pope, it's easy to, listen to a guy like that.
I know obviously Jaden's not full strength or anything like that, but I'm sure you've seen some flashes of
for
potential
sure.
from him. What kind of player can he be once he's healthy?
Oh, he's going to be a monster. I feel like, everybody's seen the highlights from last year, and that's what he is. He's going to be very good. He's special. So, looking forward to it.
What are you looking most forward to? The games, the experience from the fans. What is it that excites you about this season?
I'd probably say a little bit of everything. How much we've gelled together as a team. I'm looking forward to being with them for the rest of the year. We're gonna have a lot of fun moments on the court and off the court. We're gonna have a lot of good wins. We're gonna win a national championship, and we're gonna be able to hang out in the lodge, and those are the memories I feel like we're all gonna remember. Winning number 9, and then being able to say hey, these are some of my best friends.
You look at that 2015 team and how deep they were, and you guys might actually be even deeper. Have you ever been on this deep of a roster where everybody can play?
Yeah, it's wild how deep we are this year. So, that's an emphasis this year. We're the deepest team in the country. So, it's going to be kind of wild. I feel like we're able to, we're going to start platooning, I guess, or something like that. So, it's going to be wild. It's going to be really special.
You may have answered this, but growing up in Lexington, who were some of the first, UK memories or first players that you remember watching?
I'd probably say one of my, first memories is the John Wall Big Blue Madness. Him coming out to the John Wall dance that apparently wasn't even supposed to be his, so that was kind of fun. Growing up as a Lexington kid, I feel like every single little boy used to do the little John Wall dance and stuff like that. And then I'd probably say another huge memory is the Harrison twins, their shots in March Madness. I feel like those were wild. They were so close to winning a national championship. So, but we were actually those were March Madness runs were during spring break, and so me and all the other Kentucky people, we used to hang out and go to spring break. We were in just a random restaurant in Florida, and when they hit the shots, you just saw a bunch of people just start screaming, and everybody's like, "Who are these nuts back here screaming for Kentucky playing?" And so that's one of my best memories for sure.
And you're going to see the Harrison twins in a couple weeks for the TBT. Are you looking forward to that?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing hearing from these foreign players how special it is to play for Kentucky, and being able to see play against them. So we're going to be able to play against them and compete against them. So that's going to be really fun.
What can you say about the level of pressure to perform here as opposed to where you were? And Mark Pope said that it's different here. Have you already felt that it's just different?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's different as how much they expect, but I put a lot of pressure on myself, and so I want to say it's probably a ton different. It's a bigger university. You're competing for a national championship this year, so. But I want to say there's a lot more pressure, to be honest with you.
I don't know if you caught this, but a couple hours ago, EA Sports released something that they're going to redo the college basketball video game. How do you think this year's team would play in a potential video game?
Man, we would definitely be one of those teams that you'd probably have to ban. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like in college football, there was a couple schools that everybody was like, if you use those teams, you can't use those teams because they're too good. So I feel like we'd definitely probably be one of them. We're going to have all 99s probably. So we're going to be, we're definitely going to be on the X list. You can't use Kentucky basketball versus me.
So what's your rating then? What would you give yourself?
99 for sure. Just being in the game would be wild. I'm really looking forward to it. Seeing all the football players last year, how happy they were to see their overalls and stuff and stuff like that. So that's gonna be fun seeing that. We're all gonna probably make jokes with each other and just different stuff.
You good, guys?
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it, Reece.